Hey, it's Michael, and in this video, I wanted to talk about the three different types of enrollers that you'll need to enroll an employer group effectively. So let's get into that discussion and talk about why this is so important. Before I start, let's just state up front, enrollers are probably the most important people in this whole benefits environment. And the reason is because they got to interact with all the employees, they got to interact with department heads sometimes, and they also sometimes have to kind of facilitate people through the enrollment process if for some reason that would break down, which does happen, more often than not. So, these interpersonal situations can get kind of tricky depending on the situation, because everybody has different personalities. You catch someone on the wrong day, and how those interactions go are extremely important. So what you want to do is you want to match your enroller's skill up with what you're asking them to do when you're on site. Now, enrollment companies that send people out, if they work that way, I mean, they know the enrollers that they have different skill levels, and so but sometimes they might forget, or it just might happen that somebody might be put in a situation that was unintended. So you really need to define these roles of what you want enrollers to do when they're on site before they get there, so that everybody knows what's going on. And I've always said that, as tough as it is to kind of sell the employer on offering whatever it is that you want to offer, once you've done that, that's when the real selling begins. And it's not that you're selling them on the product, you're selling them on the enrollment process. So my enrollment process is a 3-step process where you present to the employees, you go through the information and make sure they know how the enrollment process is going to work, and then you let them take that stuff home and take a look at it, and then you come back and you follow up with them and find out what they want to do. And if they want to get in, great, you sign them up. If not, you just have them sign off. And so the first type of enroller is a follow-up person, and this is the person that can take applications. If you send or direct someone to them, or somebody comes up to talk to them and says, hey, I want to sign up or I want to sign off, they can handle that. The chances of something, going wrong in that situation, aren't as high. And most enrollers are very comfortable with, the application process of just making sure that people get what they're asking for and answering questions about the products. So it's kind of when you go above that you're going to need 2 different types of enrollers. And so I kind of classify my next set of enrollers as people that are comfortable presenting to employees in groups, or even one-on-ones, or in situations where an employee might not want to go through the process, but you kind of need to present to them anyway. And that's where really these situations can start to get kind of tricky, if you kind of need to take people through the process and there might be a little resistance there, and how that's handled. So someone who's maybe a follow-up person may not have the set of interpersonal skills, or may not desire to be put in those situations, where other people are more well-suited, or don't have any issues with doing that, and they're better at kind of smoothing through those situations and transitioning people kind of through the process so that it doesn't turn into something that it's not. So you have the follow-up person who takes apps, and then you kind of have a presenter who kind of handles meetings. And then the third type of enroller is what I call a setup person. And this is a person that kind of facilitates people through the enrollment process and makes sure that if nothing's happening, that people are kind of getting through the enrollment process. They might go work with department heads or some high-level decision maker in the group to kind of go get some help and figure out the best solution to kind of take care of that lack of activity. So somebody who's a follow-up person, and that's all they really desire to do, really isn't set up to handle that kind of interaction, to kind of make sure that it goes without a hitch, without more experience. So sometimes even a presenter is good at presenting and everything, and maybe kind of handling an individual employee here or there, but they're not really a setup person. So you have these 3 types of roles that can kind of potentially take place in a group. And so you want to make sure that you have enrollers in the right role. So problems develop when you just send enrollers out, and an enroller is involved in setting up something and they don't communicate it effectively. And I've worked with other groups, other companies, and I've seen this kind of process kind of unfold. And then somebody gets a phone call, hey, somebody made somebody mad, and really what's going on there is the person wasn't well suited for what they were being asked to do on site. So you got to do everything you can to make sure that you don't let that happen. And I think that the best thing you can do is to start everybody as a follow-up person and get them really comfortable in that role. And then as you watch them work and how they work with people, then maybe they can kind of become a presenter and then potentially a setup person. Now, if you're on your own and you're doing your own stuff, I mean, you got to be all of them. You got to be the salesperson. You got to be the setup person. You got to be the follow-up person, the presenter, and the follow-up person. You got to do them all. So, but eventually you're going to need some help, and you got to be able to kind of get those people in place. And what I found is kind of interesting is that sometimes enrollment companies, they do all the setup remotely. They don't even go on site, and kind of have the employer do most of that setup work on the ground. And then if people don't come to meetings, that's kind of when some potential problems could arise. Now, this is all important because when it comes down to it, the number one thing that we need to get good offers from insurance companies is we need good access to the employees' employer groups. And the only way we can do that is if we have a good enrollment process and we have great interactions with enrollers working with the employees in the group. So, if something breaks down there and you start to see that over time you're losing groups, you can't get in there and see the employees anymore, well, at some point you're going to have to probably take a real hard look at your enrollment process and say maybe it's the enrollment process you're using, or maybe it's you're putting enrollers in the wrong roles and just some event happened that caused the employer to go, hey, you know what, we're gonna just, you can come in here and you can sit at a table over here, and if anybody wants to come see you, they can do that. And that's when you know that something broke down in the system. So anyway, those are the three types of enrollers. You got the follow-up person, the presenter, and the setup person. And you want to make sure that you use enrollers in those well-defined categories and that they know what's expected of them when they go out, because all enrollers are not the same. Okay, so I hope that helps you out.